My son handed me the water glass with a smile, not knowing I'd seen him crush the blue powder into it. He thinks I'm senile and helpless. He's about to find out I'm just getting started. Subscribe. Request. Hit that subscribe button right now if you love seeing karma served cold. Don't miss this ride. Story Part 1. The fog in my head wasn't like a hangover. It was thicker, heavier. It felt like someone had packed my skull with cotton balls and poured warm molasses over my brain. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above my bed. Wobble, click, wobble, click. That sound used to annoy the heck out of me, but lately it was the only thing grounding me to reality. Mother, are you awake? The voice drifted in from the hallway. Richard, my son. The golden boy of upstate New York real estate. Or at least that's what his LinkedIn profile claimed. The truth was a little more complicated and a lot deeper in the red. I'm here, I rasped. My throat felt like sandpaper. When did I last drink water? Richard stepped into the room, adjusting his silk tie. He always dressed like he was about to close $1 million deal, even when he was just coming to badger his 70-year-old mother about estate management. Behind him trailed Brenda, his wife. She was wearing a tennis outfit that cost more than my first car, despite the fact that I'd never seen the woman hold a racket in her life. We brought you some herbal tea. Margaret, Brenda chirped, her voice dripping with that fake, sugary sweetness that made my teeth ache. It's good for your ... episodes. Episodes. That's what they called them. The moments where I couldn't remember where I put my reading glasses or when I'd lose my train of thought mid-sentence. 6 months ago, I was managing a stock portfolio and running the HOA board. Now, according to Dr. Evan Zaman, Richard had conveniently recommended die. Was in the early stages of rapid onset cognitive decline. I sat up, gripping the duvet. My knuckles were white, the skin translucent like parchment paper. I don't want tea, Brenda. I want coffee. Black. Richard sighed, the sound of a patient parent dealing with a toddler. Mom, you know the caffeine makes you jittery. Remember last week? You got confused and tried to start Dad's old Mustang in the garage. You left the engine running with the door closed. I narrowed my eyes. That memory was a blur. I remembered wanting to hear the engine. Per Henry loved that car, but I didn't remember closing the garage door. I'd never be that careless. Henry had taught me better. I didn't close the door, Richard, I said, though my voice lacked its usual bite. The wind must have ... Sure, Mom. The wind, Richard said, exchanging a pitying look with Brenda. He set a document folder on my nightstand. Look, we don't need to do this right now. It's just rest. But we really need to get that power of attorney signed by Friday. The banks are getting antsy about the freezing of the accounts for your protection. Protection, I muttered. From who? Myself. From predators, Margaret, Brenda added, checking her reflection in my vanity mirror. There are so many scams targeting the elderly these days. We just want to make sure the estate is secure. For the grandkids, the grandkids. They always played that card. But my granddaughter, Ashley, was too busy partying in Miami on my dime to call, and my grandson, well, I hadn't seen Jocks in 3 years. Not since the family blew up over his decision to skip college and open a motorcycle repair shop. Richard had practically disowned him. Leave the papers, I said, closing my eyes. I'm tired. Drink your tea first, Mom, Richard insisted, pushing the mug into my hands. Please, for me. I took a sip. It tasted bitter, masked by too much honey. I forced it down just to get them out of my room. Once they left, I slumped back against the pillows. The room began to tilt. The cotton in my head got thicker. I drifted into a sleep that felt less like resting and more like drowning. I woke up to a loud crash. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was dark outside. The digital clock read to 14 a.m. The crash came from downstairs. A break-in. I reached for the phone on my nightstand, but my fingers were clumsy. I knocked the receiver off the hook. Silence. The line was dead. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the brain fog. I swung my legs out of bed. My knees buckled, but I caught myself on the dresser. I had to move. I grabbed the heavy brass candlestick Henry had bought in New Orleans 40 years ago. It was heavy, solid. I crept into the hallway. The house was massive, too big for one old woman. And the shadows stretched long and twisted across the floorboards. I heard voices in the kitchen. Not burglars. Familiar voices. I moved closer to the servants' stairs, the ones that came out behind the pantry. They were narrow and steep, but they didn't creak if you stepped on the edges. Double quotes ... can single quotes T keep waiting. Rick, the investors are going to walk. That was a man's voice. Rough, not Richard. I know. Richard's voice hissed back. But the old bat has a heart like a mule. The dosage is already double what Evans suggested. If we push it too hard, it'll look like an overdose. It needs to look like natural causes or an accident related to the dementia. I froze. The brass candlestick felt like ice in my hand. Dosage? Overdose. She's signing on Friday, Richard continued. Once I have the signature, we can accelerate the decline. Put her in that facility in Vermont. The isolated one. She won't last a month without the specialized care and the boy. The rough voice asked. Jocks called the house line yesterday. I intercepted it. Jocks is a mechanic living in a trailer, Richard scoffed. He's nobody. He thinks his grandma hates him because I told him she wrote him out of the will. He won't come around. My legs gave out. I sank onto the step, clutching the banister to keep from tumbling down. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and angry. My son, my own flesh and blood. He wasn't just managing my money. He was drugging me. Gaslighting me into thinking I was losing my mind so he could steal everything. Henry and I built Dot and Jocks. He thought I hated him. I heard footsteps approaching the stairs. I scrambled up, adrenaline momentarily burning through the drugs in my system. I made it back to my room and dove into bed, pulling the covers up to my chin just as the door creaked open. Mom? Richard whispered. Dot. I kept my breathing slow and even, feigning sleep. He stood there for a long time, watching me. I could feel his gaze like a physical weight. Finally, he closed the door. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I lay there, staring into the darkness, plotting. I wasn't senile. I wasn't crazy. I was poisoned. And I was furious. The next morning, the sun was deceptively bright. I dragged myself to the shower, letting the cold water shock my system. I needed to be sharp. I needed an ally. I dressed in slacks and a blouse, skipping the comfy robe Brenda always tried to put me in. I walked downstairs, using the banister for support but keeping my head high. Richard was at the kitchen island drinking espresso. Mom, you're up early. How do you feel? Better, I lied. Clearer. He frowned slightly. That's good. Listen, about the papers, I'm considering it. Richard, I cut him off. But I want to see the garden. I need fresh air. I'll come with you. No, I snapped. Then I softened my tone. I just want a moment alone with your father's roses. Please. He hesitated, then checked his watch. Fine. I have a conference call in 10 minutes anyway. Stay within sight of the house, okay? Don't wander off. I walked out the back patio doors. The moment I was out of sight, tucked behind the massive hedge maze Henry had planted in the 80s, I pulled a burner phone out of my bra. I'd found it in the guest room closet a month ago, left behind by one of Ashley's friends during a party. I had kept it charged, hidden in a hollowed-out book, just in case. I never thought I'd actually need it. My fingers trembled as I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. I prayed he hadn't changed it. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Auto shop, a gruff voice answered. Jocks, I whispered. It's Grandma, Maggie. Silence on the other end. Then, a guarded grandma. Why are you calling me? Dad said you didn't want to speak to. Listen to me very carefully, Jackson, I said, using his full name. Your father is a liar. And right now, I think he's trying to kill me. Whoa, what? Grandma, are you okay? You sound... I hissed, glancing back toward the house. I saw movement in the kitchen window. I need you to come here. Not to the front door. Park on the old logging road behind the estate. Bring your tools. And for God's sake, don't tell anyone you're coming. Okay, I'm on my way. Be there in an hour. I hung up and hid the phone in the dirt beneath a rose bush. An hour later, I was sitting on a stone bench near the back perimeter of the property. The woods were dense here. A figure emerged from the trees. JX looked different. He was taller, broader. He wore grease-stained coveralls and had tattoos on his forearms. But his eyes, they were Henry's eyes. Kind, worried. Grandma. He stepped over the low stone wall. "Stay down," I whispered, motioning him behind a large oak tree. "They have cameras on the patio." He crouched beside me. "You look. Grandma, you look sick. Pale. I'm being poisoned. Jocks. The herbal tea, the pills Dr. Evans prescribes. They make me confused, weak. They told me I have dementia." Jocks clenched his jaw. He reached out and took my pulse. His hands were rough, calloused but gentle. "Let me see the pills." I pulled a small tissue from my pocket. Inside was one of the blue capsules Richard had given me this morning. I had cheeked it and spit it out later. Jack took it, sniffed it, then carefully opened the capsule. He tasted a tiny grain of the powder and immediately spit it out, wiping his tongue on his sleeve. "Benzos," he muttered darkly. "Strong ones. And something else. Maybe This isn't for dementia, Grandma. This cocktail would drop a horse. It slows your heart rate and messes with your memory formation. Long-term exposure would cause organ failure." "He wants the estate," I said, my voice steady despite the fear gripping my heart. "He's in debt. I heard him talking last night to a man with a rough voice." "Rough voice?" Jocks's eyes widened. "Did he call him Vinny or Sal?" "No names. Why?" "Dad's been gambling," Jock said, looking toward the house. "I heard rumors around town. He's in deep with some loan sharks from the city. That's why he's desperate." It all clicked. The urgency. The layoff stories that didn't add up. "He wants me to sign power of attorney on Friday," I said. "Today is Wednesday. Need to get you out of here," Jock said, standing up. "No," I grabbed his wrist. "If we run now, he wins. He'll claim I was kidnapped or wandered off. He has the police chief in his pocket. He'll find me, declare me incompetent, and lock me away. So what do we do?" Jocks asked. "You can't stay there." I looked at the house, my house. The house Henry built for us. I looked at the rose bushes, the sprawling lawns. "I'm not leaving my home to a gambling addict and his gold-digger wife," I said, a cold resolve settling in my stomach. "We aren't going to run, Jocks. We're going to play along. I need you to get me safe pills that look exactly like these. Placebos. Can you do that?" Jocks nodded slowly. "I know a guy at a compounding pharmacy. He owes me a favor. I can get empty blue capsules and fill them with sugar or flour." "Good. Do it tonight." "And then what?" I looked my grandson in the eye. "Then we let Richard think he's winning. I need to clear the drugs from my system so I can think straight. And then I'm going to rewrite the will. But I need evidence. I need you to bug the house." Jocks grinned. A sharp, dangerous smile that reminded me of myself 40 years ago. "Now you're talking my language, Grandma. Go," I urged him. "Come back tonight at 2 a.m. I'll leave the pantry window unlocked." As Jock slipped back into the woods, I stood up and smoothed my slacks. I walked back toward the house, practicing my confused, trembling old lady walk. Richard was waiting at the patio door. "Mom, I was getting worried," he said, scanning the yard suspiciously. "Who were you talking to?" I blinked at him, letting my mouth hang open slightly. "Talking." I was talking to Henry. He said the roses need more water. Richard relaxed, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. He thought I was gone. He thought the game was over. "'Kay, Mom," he chuckled. "Come inside. It's time for your medicine." I took his arm, leaning heavily on him. "You're such a good boy, Richard," I said. I hope he enjoys that thought, because it's the last nice thing I'm ever going to say to him. The digital clock on the microwave read 2:03 a.m. I was sitting in the dark pantry. smelling the faint scent of dried oregano and stale crackers, waiting for the window to slide up. A soft click. Then the sash raised. Jock slid through the opening with the grace of a cat burglar, landing silently on the linoleum. He smelled like motor oil and cheap coffee. A scent that suddenly felt more comforting to me than the expensive lavender potpourri Brenda insisted on scattering everywhere. "Grams," he whispered, pulling his black hoodie down. "Coast is clear." "They're asleep," I whispered back. "Richard had 3 scotches before bed. He's out cold." Jocks pulled a small orange prescription bottle from his pocket. "Okay, here's the switch. These are empty gelatin capsules filled with powdered sugar and a little bit of flour for weight. They look exactly like the poison he's been feeding you." My hands were shaking partly from the drugs still in my system, partly from the adrenaline. I led him to the kitchen cabinet where Richard kept my medication, took down the bottle labeled Margaret Lorazepam Haloperidol Compound. "Jesus," Jocks muttered, reading the label. "He's giving you an antipsychotic mixed with a heavy sedative. That's chemical straitjacket stuff." We worked quickly. I dumped the real pills into a Ziploc bag Jocks held open, and we poured the fake sugar pills into the pharmacy bottle. It looked identical. The blue casing, the size perfect, flush the real ones. I asked. "No." Jocks shook his head. "Evidence. I'm taking these to a lab buddy of mine to get an official toxicology report. We need proof of what was in them." He pocketed the bag. "Now, phase 2. He pulled out 3 small black discs, no bigger than a quarter. "These are bugs. Bluetooth-enabled long range. I'm going to sync them to the burner phone I gave you and my own tablet. We'll hear everything." He stuck one under the lip of the granite kitchen island, Richard's favorite spot to take calls. He placed another behind the curtain rod in the living room. "Where does he do his business?" "The study," I said. "Down the hall." "But the door is locked." Jock smirked and pulled a tension wrench and a pick from his pocket. "Locked for you, not for me." 30 seconds later, we were in Henry's old study. It smelled like leather and cigar smoke, a smell Richard had contaminated with his cheap cologne. Jocks planted the last bug behind the heavy oak bookshelf. "'Kay, Jocks," said, turning to me. "Now comes the hard part. You're going cold turkey off those meds. Tomorrow is going to suck. You're going to get the shakes, maybe some rebound anxiety. You have to hide it. If Richard sees you twitching too much, he might call the doctor." "I can handle it," I said, lifting my chin. I raised that ungrateful man. "I can handle a headache." Jocks hugged me, then a fierce, desperate hug. "I missed you, Grandma." "I missed you too, kid. Now go, before Brenda wakes up and needs a midnight snack." The next morning, Thursday, was hell on earth. Jax wasn't kidding. By 9 a.m., my skin felt like it was crawling with ants. My hands had a tremor that I couldn't control. I sat at the kitchen table, clutching my coffee mug with both hands to keep it steady. "Morning, Margaret." Brenda breezed in, her heels clicking on the tile. She was wearing oversized sunglasses indoors. "You look frazzled." "Just a bad dream," I mumbled, letting my voice waver. It wasn't hard. I felt like I was vibrating apart. Richard walked in a moment later, already on his phone. He hung up as he saw me. "Mom, time for your meds." He shook 2 of the blue sugar pills into his palm and handed them to me with a glass of water. I looked at him, really looked at him. The bags under his eyes were deep. He looked sweaty, desperate. I popped the pills into my mouth, took a swig of water, and swallowed. "Good girl," he said, patting my shoulder. The condescension made my blood boil, which actually helped distract me from the withdrawal symptoms. "Mr. Henderson is coming tomorrow at 10 a.m. with the notary. We're going to get those papers signed so you don't have to worry about finances anymore." "Mr. Henderson?" I asked, feigning confusion. "Is he the one with the mustache?" "Mr. Henderson retired 5 years ago." "Mom," Richard sighed, annoyed. "His son took over the firm. You know that. Just ... Rest today. We need you, Lucidish, for tomorrow." He walked off toward his study. As soon as the door clicked shut, I pulled the burner phone from my pocket and put in the single earbud Jocks had given me. I tapped the app that the audio from the study was crystal clear. Listen to me, Vinny. Richard's voice was shaking. I told you Friday. It's a lock. She's signing the power of attorney and the transfer on death deed. I'll have control of the liquid assets by Monday morning. A pause. The person on the other end was shouting loud enough for the mic to pick up the distortion. I know. Richard yelled back. 500 grand? Plus the VIG. I have it covered. The house alone is worth 2 million. I'm listing it next week. I'm putting her in the Greenwood facility. It's cheap, state-run. She won't know the difference. I froze state-run. He wasn't even going to put me in a nice home. He was going to dump me in a warehouse for the dying while he sold Henry's legacy to pay off a gambling debt. No, don't come to the house, Richard pleaded. If she sees you? Look, she's practically a vegetable, but we can't risk spooking her. Just give me 48 hours. I took the earbud out, my hand trembling violently. This wasn't just greed. This was survival. He was in deep with dangerous people. If he didn't pay, they'd probably break his legs. A small, dark part of me thought, let them. But he'd burn everything I owned before that happened. I spent the afternoon pacing my bedroom, fighting the withdrawal. My brain felt like a raw nerve. Every sound was too loud. The sunlight was too bright. But the fog, the thick molasses fog, was lifting. I could remember dates again. I could remember the code to the wall safe behind the painting in the hallway, 198204. Around 3 p.m. Brenda came into my room. I was sitting in the armchair, pretending to nap. Through my eyelashes, I watched her. She tiptoed to my jewelry armoire, the one Henry had bought me for our 25th anniversary. She opened the top drawer. Jackpot, she whispered. She pulled out my emerald brooch, the one I wore to Stephen's wedding. She held it up to the light, then slipped it into her pocket. Then she reached for the pearl necklace my mother had given me. I couldn't just watch. I had to stop her, but I had to stay in character. I groaned loudly, shifting in the chair. Henry, is that you? Brenda jumped, slamming the drawer shut. She spun around, a guilty, flushed look on her face. Jesus, Margaret, you scared me. I blinked at her, widening my eyes. Who are you? Where's the nurse? Brenda rolled her eyes, her confidence returning. I'm Brenda, your daughter-in-law. Go back to sleep, old woman. Did you bring the candy? I asked, pointing a shaky finger at her pocket where the brooch was bulging. I saw you put the shiny candy in your pocket. Brenda froze. She patted her pocket nervously. It's not candy, Margaret. It's just cleaning supplies. I was cleaning your jewelry. It was dusty, I said, letting my head loll back. That's nice. Henry always liked it clean. She scurried out of the room like a rat. I waited until her footsteps faded, then I grabbed my notebook. I wrote down the date, time, and exactly what she stole. Emerald brooch. 3:15 p.m. Karma was going to be a bitch. That night, the withdrawal peaked. I was sweating through my sheets, my heart racing. I thought about calling Jocks, but I didn't want him to worry. I had to be strong. I focused on the anger. The rage was the only fuel I had left. I crept downstairs at midnight. The house was silent. I needed water. As I passed the study, I saw a sliver of light under the door. Richard was still up. I pressed myself against the wall, listening. He wasn't on the phone this time. He was muttering to himself. I risked a peek through the keyhole. Richard was sitting at Henry's desk, practicing. He had a stack of papers in front of him. He would sign a paper, look at it, curse, crumple it up, and throw it on the floor. Make it shaky, he whispered to himself. Make it look like hers. My stomach dropped. He was practicing forging my signature, just in case I refused to sign tomorrow. Or was he planning to sign things I didn't see? I went back to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and then had an idea. I went to the junk drawer where we kept the spare keys. I found the key to the detached garage. If Richard wanted to play dirty, if I needed to know exactly how much dirt he had, I slipped out the back door. The night air was cool, helping the sweat on my forehead dry. I walked to the garage, staying in the shadows. Inside, Richard's BMW was parked next to Henry's dusty Mustang. I opened the BMW's passenger door and locked. Typical Richard Arrogant popped the glove box. It was a mess. Unpaid parking tickets, empty fast food wrappers. But underneath the trash was a manila envelope. I pulled it out. It wasn't just loan shark debts. It was a second mortgage application on my house, denied a credit card application in my name, approved, and a letter from a life insurance company policy change request. Beneficiary update. He had tried to change the beneficiary on my life insurance policy from estate to Richard Bennett. The letter was a rejection notice, stating they needed a notarized signature from the policyholder. That's what tomorrow was about. It wasn't just the house. He wanted the life insurance money, and for that to pay out, I had to die. I stood there in the dark garage, the paper trembling in my hand. The facility he mentioned. The state-run home. He never planned on me lasting there. He needed the payout now. "'Kay, Richard," I whispered to the empty car. "You want my signature? You're going to get it." My burner phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Jocks. Got the tox report back. Lethal levels of Haldol. If you'd taken those pills for another week, your heart would have stopped. We have him, Graham's police. I stared at the screen. Police? If we called them now, Richard would be arrested. He'd go to jail. Brenda would play the victim. The money would be tied up in litigation for years. And I'd just be this sad old victim who almost got killed by her son. No, that wasn't enough. I didn't just want him arrested. I wanted him destroyed. I wanted him to feel the panic he'd made me feel. I wanted to strip him of his ego, his reputation, and his freedom, all in one public swoop. I typed back, "No police yet. Bring the truck around the back at 9:45 a.m. tomorrow. Park in the blind spot. And bring your portable speaker." "The big one," Jocks replied. "What's the plan?" I smiled, a grim, tight expression in the darkness. "We're going to have a little party." Friday morning arrived with a sky the color of a fresh, bruised dark purple fading into a sickly yellow. It matched the mood in the house perfectly. I spent an extra 10 minutes in front of the vanity mirror applying my makeup. I didn't try to look young. I did the opposite. I applied my lipstick slightly outside the lines of my mouth, just enough to look sloppy, unkempt. I mismatched my earrings, a pearl stud in the left ear, a dangling gold hoop in the right. I put on a cardigan that had a coffee stain on the cuff I hadn't washed out. If Richard wanted a senile old woman, I was going to give him an Oscar-worthy performance. "Margaret." Brenda's voice screeched up the stairs. "Mr. Henderson is here." "Stop dawdling." I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding, but not from fear anymore. It was the thrill of the hunt. I checked my pocket. The burner phone was there, recording. I shuffled to the door, assumed my posture, shoulders slumped. Head slightly bowed on, began the slow descent. In the dining room, the atmosphere was thick enough to cut with a knife. Richard was pacing, his suit jacket off, sweat already staining the armpits of his dress shirt. Brenda was hovering near the sideboard, eyeing the silver tea set like she was calculating its pawn value. And then there was Mr. Henderson. Richard had lied, of course. This wasn't old Kyle Henderson who had handled Henry's business for 30 years. This was a kid, maybe 28, with a suit that was too shiny and a briefcase that looked like it was made of vinyl. He had shady notary written all over him. "Mom," Richard said, rushing over and gripping my elbow a little too tightly. "This is Kyle Jr. He's taking over the firm. Sit down. We need to get this done." I blinked at the young man. "You look like a ferret," I said loudly. The lawyer froze. "Brenda choked on her water, Mom." Richard hissed. "Be polite." "It's okay," the lawyer said, forcing a slimeball smile. "Mrs. Bennett, good to see you. We have some standard documents for you to sign today. Just updating the estate planning, making sure your assets are protected." I sat down, letting my hand tremble as I reached for the glass of water. Protected. From the communists. Richard rolled his eyes, checking his watch. It was 9:58 a.m. "Yes, Mom. From the communists. Just sign where the yellow sticky notes are." He slid a stack of documents across the mahogany table. I looked down. The top one was the power of attorney. Underneath that, barely peeking out, was the deed transfer. And at the bottom, the life insurance beneficiary change. I picked up the pen. I held it awkwardly like a child holding a crayon. I hovered the tip over the signature line. "That's it," Richard whispered, his eyes hungry. "Right there." I lowered the pen. Then I stopped. "I need my glasses. I can't see the letters. They're swimming." "You don't need to read it, Margaret," Brenda snapped. "Richard read it for you." "I want my glasses." I wailed, throwing a little tantrum, slamming the pen down. Henry always said, "Never sign what you can't read." Richard closed his eyes, exhaling sharply through his nose. "Brenda, go get her glasses from the nightstand. Hurry." Brenda stomped off upstairs. Richard leaned in close to me. "Mom, focus. Do this for me, please. I'm your son." I looked at him. I saw the desperation, the greed, the complete lack of love. "My son," I repeated softly. "My little Ricky." "Yes," he said, thinking he had me. "Just sign." I looked at the clock on the mantel. 10:02 a.m., Jocks was late. A spike of real anxiety hit me. If he didn't show up, I couldn't stall forever. "I don't know," I muttered. "I feel dizzy." "Sign the paper and you can go lie down," the lawyer urged, pushing the paper closer. Suddenly, a bass line thumped. Boom, boom, bap, boom, dot, boom, dot. It was loud. Window rattling loud. It was coming from the backyard. What the hell? Richard spun around toward the patio doors. The music cranked up. It wasn't just noise. It was thunderstruck by a CDC, blasting at a volume that probably woke the neighbors 3 streets over. "Is that rock and roll?" I asked, feigning delight. "Is Henry having a party?" Richard stormed to the patio doors and yanked the curtains open. His jaw dropped. Parked right on the back lawn. My beautiful manicured lawn was a massive beat-up tow truck. And in the bed of the truck, sitting on a lawn chair next to a concert-sized speaker, was Jocks. But he wasn't alone. Standing around the truck were 4 of the largest human beings I had ever seen. They were wearing leather vests, bandanas, and grease-stained jeans. They looked like the kind of guys who ate nails for breakfast. "What is this?" Richard screamed. "Who are these people?" The patio door slid open. Jocks walked in, grinning ear to ear. He was holding a sheet cake from the grocery store. "Surprise!" Jocks yelled over the music. He signaled one of the bikers, who killed the volume on the speaker. The sudden silence was deafening. "Jocks!" Richard sputtered, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. "What are you doing here?" "Get out. Get off the property." "Grandma invited us," Jocks said casually, setting the cake down right on top of the legal documents. The frosting smeared across the power of attorney. "Oops," Jocks said, not looking sorry at all. "My bad. I didn't invite." Richard started, but I cut him off. "Oh, look, it's a party." I clapped my hands together, standing up. "I told Jackson to come. I said, if I'm signing away my life, I want cake." Brenda came running back downstairs with my glasses. She stopped dead in the doorway, staring at the biker named Tiny, who was at least 6'5" with a beard that reached his chest, who had just wandered into the dining room. "Richard!" Brenda shrieked. "There are tech criminals in the house?" "We ain't criminals, lady," Tiny rumbled, his voice like gravel in a mixer. "We're witnesses." "Notaries usually require witnesses, right?" He looked at the young lawyer. "Ain't that right, Suit?" The lawyer, Kyle Jr., looked terrified. He pulled his briefcase closer to his chest. Typically, family is sufficient. But ... nonsense." I declared, grabbing Tiny's arm. "These are my boys. This is... What was your name again, dear?" "Tiny, ma'am," he said, surprisingly gentle. "Tiny. He looks trustworthy. He can witness." I turned to Richard. "Now, where do I sign? I want a piece of that cake." Richard looked like he was about to have a stroke. He was cornered. He couldn't physically force me to sign in front of 5 massive mechanics. He couldn't call the police because Jocks' estranged son was technically family. And I had just verbally claimed I invited them. If cops came, the dementia narrative would be tested. And Richard couldn't risk anyone looking too closely at the house or my condition. "Jocks," Richard said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Can I speak to you in the kitchen?" "Now, sure, Dad," Jock said, grabbing a slice of cake with his bare hand. "Be right there." They went into the kitchen. The lawyer sat there, looking uncomfortable. Brenda stood by the wall, clutching her pearls literally. "So," Tiny said to the lawyer, leaning over the table, "you a lawyer? Or just a guy with a printer?" I practice elder law, the kid squeaked. "Is that right?" Tiny picked up the transfer on death deed. "'Cause this looks like a quitclaim deed disguised as a trust transfer. Seems kinda disadvantageous for the nice lady, don't it?" The lawyer went pale. "I'm just following the client's instructions." "She's the client." Tiny pointed a sausage-sized finger at me. "Not the sweaty guy in the kitchen." Meanwhile, I pulled out my earbud and stuck it in my right ear, hiding it under my hair. I needed to hear the kitchen conversation, ... "What the hell is your game, Jackson?" Richard was hissing. "No game, Dad. Grandma called me. Said she was confused. Said you were making her sign things. I figured she needed support. She's senile. She doesn't know what day it is. I am trying to save this family from financial ruin. By selling her house, by stealing her life insurance. You ungrateful little punk. You have no idea the pressure I'm under. These people. They don't play nice." "What people, Dad?" Jocks pressed. "Who do you?" "It doesn't matter. If I don't get those papers signed today, by noon, things are going to get very bad. For all of us. Now get your biker trash out of here, or I swear to God I will." "You will, what?" Jocks's voice dropped, cold and hard. "You'll hit me. Like you used to. Go ahead. Try it. Tiny is itching for a reason." Silence. Then the sound of Richard hyperventilating. Just keep them quiet," Richard pleaded, his tone shifting from aggression to pathetic begging. "Let me get the signature. I'll give you 10 grand. Cash once the loan clears." 10 grand? Jocks laughed. "I make that in a month fixing the bikes you think are trash." "I don't want your money." They walked back into the dining room. Richard looked composed, but his eyes were wild. "'Kay," Richard announced, clapping his hands. "Everyone has had their fun. But Mom really needs to sign these. Her health is failing and we need to get her back to bed." He pulled a fresh copy of the power of attorney from his briefcase. He had spares, of course. "Here, Mom. Sign." I took the pen again. The room went silent. Tiny, Jocks, the other bikers, Brenda, the lawyer, everyone watched. I lowered the pen to the paper. "You know," I said, my voice suddenly clear, dropping the waver. "I just remembered something." Richard froze. "What?" "I remembered I don't like this pen," I said, tossing it across the room. It hit the wall with a satisfying clack. "It's too heavy. And I don't like this paper. It smells like lies." "Mom, stop it," Richard growled, reaching for my wrist. Tiny stepped forward. "Hands off, slick." Richard recoiled. "She's having an episode. She needs her medication." I took my medication. I smiled sweetly at him. "The blue ones, right? With the sugar inside." Richard's face went blank. "What?" "The sugar," I repeated, tapping my nose. "Sweet, like you, Brenda?" Richard stared at me. The gears were turning. He looked at Jocks. Jocks was smirking. He looked back at me. He realized in that second that something was very, very wrong. But he couldn't say it. He couldn't say, "No, the pills are poison," because that would be a confession. He was trapped in his own lie. "Mr. Henderson," I turned to the lawyer. "I think I'm too tired to sign today. All this excitement. Maybe we can do this next week. Or next year." The lawyer stood up so fast his chair fell over. I think that's best. Capacity seems to be an issue here. I cannot ethically notarize this. Ethically." Richard screamed. "I paid you $2,000 to be here." Shut up! The lawyer hissed, shoving his papers into his briefcase. I'm leaving. Don't call me again. He practically ran out the front door. Richard stood there, trembling. The signing was dead. The deadline for his loan sharks was today at noon. He had failed, I said, dipping a finger into the cake and licking the frosting. That was fun. Who wants coffee? Richard looked at me with pure hatred. You old witch. You planned this. Planned what, Ricky? I widened my eyes innocently. I just wanted a party. Richard grabbed a vase from the sideboard and hurled it against the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. Brenda screamed. This isn't over. Richard yelled, pointing a shaking finger at Jocks. You think you won? You have no idea what you just started. They're going to come for us. All of us. He stormed out of the room, grabbing his car keys. We heard the front door slam, followed by the screech of tires as his BMW peeled out of the driveway. The room was quiet for a moment, save for the hum of the refrigerator. It's going to meet them, Jock said, his voice serious. The loan sharks. He's going to try to buy more time. He won't get it, I said, my voice cold and sharp, dropping the act entirely. He's desperate, and desperate men make mistakes. What do we do now? Tiny asked, crossing his massive arms. Now, I walked over to the window and watched the dust settle where Richard's car had vanished. Now we change the locks. And then we go to the bank. I have a safe deposit box Richard doesn't know about. It's time I've liquidated some assets of my own. You going to pay off his debt? Jocks asked, frowning. Hell no. I turned to face them. I'm going to buy the debt. Jocks' eyebrows shot up. You're going to what? If Vinny or Sal or whoever holds his note is looking for money, I said I'll give it to them. In exchange for the paper, I don't want Richard to owe the mob, Jocks. I want him to owe me. I smiled, and for the first time in months, I felt truly alive, and I'm going to collect with interest. The silence in the dining room after Richard's dramatic exit was broken only by the sound of Brenda sobbing into a napkin. She sat huddled at the end of the table, looking like a wilted flower in her expensive tennis whites. The bikers, Tiny included, were ignoring her, happily devouring the rest of the grocery store sheet cake. I walked over to Brenda. The adrenaline was still pumping through my veins, making my senses sharp. I felt 20 years younger. Get up, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it had the same tone I used to use when Richard was a teenager and missed curfew. Brenda looked up, her mascara running in black streaks down her cheeks. Margaret, please. Richard is. He's in trouble. We have to help him. We? I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. There is no we, Brenda. There is me, and there is the thief who married my son. You think I didn't see you pocket my emerald brooch yesterday? Or the pearl necklace? Brenda's face went pale. She instinctively clutched her purse. I was protecting them. Safekeeping. Bull, I snapped. You were looting the ship because you thought it was sinking. Now, here is how this is going to work. You are going to get in your car, and you are going to leave. You aren't going to call Richard. You aren't going to warn him. If you do, I hand the video footage of you stealing my jewelry to the police. Grand larceny is a felony, dear. She stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the hardwood. You're insane. Both of you. She glared at Jocks. He's going to ruin you. He already tried, Jocks said, licking frosting off his thumb. Didn't work. Bye, Brenda. She fled. The front door slammed for the second time that morning. Okay, I said, turning to the room. Tiny, can you and your boys hold down the fort? I don't want Richard getting back in if he circles back early. Yes, ma'am, Tiny grunted. Nobody gets in unless they know the password. Password is blueberry, I said. Jocks, bring the truck around. We have a bank to visit, and then we have to go see a man about a dog. A dog? Jocks asked, confused. A loan shark? I corrected. I need to find out who holds Richard's leash. 10 minutes later, I was climbing into the passenger seat of Jox's tow truck. It was high up and my arthritic hip protested, but I grit my teeth and hauled myself in. The cab smelled of stale cigarettes and pine air freshener. We need to listen to the recordings from the last week, I told Jox, as he pulled onto the highway. Richard must have mentioned a name or a location. Jox handed me his tablet. We scrolled through the audio logs captured by the bugs we planted. Most of it was Richard pacing and muttering, or Brenda complaining about the lack of liquidity. But on Tuesday night, there was a call. Yeah, Mick. I know where the warehouse is. By the docks. The one behind the impound lot. I'll be there. Mick, Jox said, gripping the steering wheel. Mick the Hammer O'Reilly. He runs a legitimate shipping logistics company down by the river. But everyone knows he moves money and stolen goods. You know him? I fixed a Harley for one of his enforcers once. He pays in cash. He's old school, dangerous. Good, I said, staring out the window at the passing strip malls. Old school I can handle. It's the new school, the digital theft, the gaslighting that I hate. First. We stopped at the First National Bank. I walked in with Jox flanking me like a bodyguard. The teller, a woman named Susan, who had known me for decades, looked concerned seeing me with a grease-stained mechanic. But I flashed her a smile. Just accessing the safe deposit box. Susan, I said. Down in the vault. I opened box 404. Inside wasn't just papers. Henry didn't trust the stock market after the crash in '08. He trusted tangible assets. Inside were stacks of gold Krugerrands, a pouch of loose diamonds he'd bought from a dealer in Antwerp in the '90s, and cash. Bundles of $100 bills wrapped in rubber bands. Whoa, Jox whispered, his eyes wide. Grandma, are you? Were you guys drug lords? Construction, honey. I winked. And cash-only consulting. Your grandfather liked to be prepared for a rainy day. I counted out $500,000 in value, mostly the gold and the diamonds. With enough cash to sweeten the deal, I put it all in my oversized knitting bag. It was heavy. Let's go, I said. The drive to the docks took 30 minutes. The scenery changed from manicured suburban lawns to rusted chain-link fences and shipping containers stacked like Lego bricks. We pulled up to a nondescript brick building with a sign that read, O'Reilly Logistics. Two men in cheap suits were smoking outside. They stiffened when they saw the tow truck. Stay here, I told Jox. No way. He shook his head. I'm not letting you go in there alone. Jox. If you go in, it looks like a fight. If I go in, it looks like a confused old lady. It's safer. Double quotes, Grandma. Engine running. Jox. Be ready to leave fast. I climbed out of the truck, clutching my knitting bag. I shuffled toward the door, stooping my shoulders, putting the mask back on. The men blocked my path. Lost, lady. One of them sneered. I'm looking for Mr. Mick, I said, my voice quavering. My son Richard said he works here. I brought him his lunch. The guards exchanged a look. Richard Bennett. Yes. My Ricky. Is he here? One of the men spoke into an earpiece. A moment later, the door buzzed open. Boss says, let her in. Weird. They led me down a hallway that smelled of stale cigar smoke and lemon pledge. We entered a large office. Behind a massive oak desk sat a man who looked like a bulldog wearing a vest. Mick O'Reilly, he didn't stand up. He just stared at me, an unlit cigar clamped between his teeth. You're Bennett's mother? Asked. His voice sounded like tires rolling over gravel. I am, I said, dropping the confused act instantly. I stood up straight, rolled my shoulders back, and walked to the chair opposite his desk. I sat down uninvited. Mick raised an eyebrow. You don't look like the invalid he described. And you don't look like a logistics manager, I countered. But we all wear costumes, don't we? Mick chuckled, a low rumble. Fair point. So, what do you want? Richard isn't here. He came by an hour ago, crying, begging for another week. I told him he has until sunset or my guys pay a visit to his knees. Asterisk, I know, I said calmly. I'm here to clean up his mess. Asterisk you. Mick looked at my knitting bag. You got a bake sale, lady? Asterisk, I unzipped the bag and dumped the contents onto his desk. The gold coins clattered loudly against the wood. The pouch of diamonds spilled out, glittering under the fluorescent lights. The stacks of cash landed with a heavy thud. Asterisk. The guards by the door took a step forward. Mick held up a hand to stop them. He picked up a gold coin, bit it, then looked at the diamonds. Asterisk, appraised value is roughly 600,000, I said. Richard owes you 500, correct? Plus the vig. Asterisk Mick leaned back, assessing me. The amusement was gone from his eyes, replaced by respect. 550 as of today. But why? He tried to rob you. He told me the plan. Get the old bat to sign, sell the house, pay the debt. He was betting on your death. Asterisk, I know, I said coldly. Here's a disappointment. But he's a Bennett. And Bennetts pay their debts. I don't want him owing you. I don't want your men coming to my house, frightening the neighbors. Asterisk, so you're bailing him out? Mick scoffed, enabling him. Asterisk, no. I leaned forward, my eyes locking with his. I'm buying the note. I'm buying the debt from you. You take this, I gestured to the pile of wealth, and you sign over the promissory note to me. Richard doesn't owe you anymore. He owes me. Asterisk Mick was silent for a long moment. He looked at the gold, then at me. Then he laughed a genuine loud laugh. Asterisk, that's cold, lady. Ice cold. I like it. He opened a drawer and pulled out a signed contract. Richard's signature was scrawled at the bottom in shaky ink. You want to be his collector? Be my guest. Kids, a loser. He'll never pay. Asterisk, oh, he'll pay, I said, taking the paper. One way or another. Asterisk Mick swept the golden cash into his own drawer. Pleasure doing business with you, Mrs. Bennett. Can I offer you a scotch? It's 11 a.m., but who's counting? Asterisk, no thank you. I stood up, putting the contract securely in my purse. I have a house to secure. Asterisk, I walked out of that office feeling 10 feet tall. When I got back to the truck, Jocks was gripping a tire iron, ready to charge in. Asterisk, you okay? He asked, scanning me for injuries. Asterisk drive. I said, patting my purse. I own him. Asterisk, we got back to the house just after noon. The bikers were still there, playing cards in the living room. Brenda hadn't returned. Asterisk, he's coming, Tiny said, looking out the window. BMW just turned the corner. He's driving slow. Asterisk, clear out, I told them. Hide the truck in the garage. Tiny, you and the boys go to the basement. I want him to think the house is empty. Asterisk, you sure? Jocks asked. Asterisk, positive. I need him to feel safe before the trap snaps shut. Asterisk, they scrambled. Within 2 minutes, the house looked quiet. I sat in my armchair in the living room, facing the door. I placed the signed loan contract on the small table beside me, next to a fresh cup of tea. I heard the key turn in the lock. Richard walked in. He looked like a dead man walking. His tie was undone, his shirt stained with sweat. He looked around the quiet house, likely assuming the bikers had left, and well, he probably hoped I was dead or asleep. He saw me, Mom. He croaked. Asterisk, hello, Richard, I said pleasantly. Did you have a nice drive? Asterisk, he slumped against the doorframe. Mom, look, I'm sorry about earlier. I was stressed. The medication, I didn't mean those things. Save it, I said. He rubbed his face. I'm in trouble, Mom. Real trouble. If I don't get money by tonight, they're going to hurt me. Maybe kill me. He looked at me with pleading eyes. I know you have money hidden. Dad always said you did. Please, I'll pay you back. I swear. Asterisk, I took a sip of tea. You won't pay me back, Richard? You never have. Asterisk, please. They're animals. Asterisk, I know, I said. I met them. Asterisk, Richard froze. What? Asterisk Mick? Nice man. Likes cigars. I picked up the piece of paper from the table. We had a lovely chat about you. Asterisk Richard's eyes locked onto the paper. He recognized it. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. Asterisk you ... You went to Mick. Asterisk, I paid him off, I said casually. The gold coins your father left me. Gone. The diamonds. Gone. Your debt is cleared. Asterisk Richard let out a sob of relief. He actually fell to his knees. Oh God, oh, thank God. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. I promise, I'll make it up to you. I'll asterisk get up, I barked. The sound cracked like a whip. Asterisk, he scrambled to his feet. Confused by the shift in my tone? Asterisk, I didn't pay it off for you, I said, standing up and walking toward him. I bought it. Look at the transfer line at the bottom. Asterisk, I held the paper up. Transferred to holder, Margaret Bennett. Asterisk, you owe me $550,000, Richard. Payable immediately. And unlike Mick, I don't break knees. I smiled, and it was a smile that promised something much worse than physical pain. I break lives. Asterisk what ... What do you mean? He STAMMERED ... asterisk I mean, I said, pulling my phone out. That if you don't do exactly what I say, starting right now, I send the recording of you plotting my murder to the police. I send the evidence of the gas tampering to the insurance board. And I send this debt contract to every employer in the state. Asterisk. You wouldn't, he whispered. I'm your son. Asterisk, my son died a long time ago, I said softly. You're just a bad investment I'm about to liquidate. Asterisk, what do you want? He asked, defeated. Asterisk first, I pointed to the door. Go to the garage. Get the lawnmower. The grass is getting long. Mom, I mow. I screamed, channeling every ounce of rage I had suppressed for 6 months. Asterisk Richard flinched. He turned and ran out the door. Asterisk, I watched him go. Through the window, I saw him dragging the heavy mower out, still in his expensive suit. He pulled the cord. It sputtered. He pulled again. Asterisk's jocks came up from the basement, tiny behind him. They stood next to me, watching the man who had tried to destroy us now sweating over a patch of Kentucky bluegrass. Asterisk, he's mowing the lawn in Italian loafers. Jocks, noted asterisk, it's a start, I said. But we have a long way to go. Asterisk, what's part 2? Tiny asked asterisk part 2, I said, turning away from the window, is getting my house back, legally, and making sure he leaves here with nothing but the shirt on his back. I looked at the contract in my hand. Jocks, call the real estate agent. The one you trust. Not Brenda's friend. I want an appraisal done today. Double quotes asterisk, you selling the house. Jocks asked, worried? Asterisk, no, I smiled. I'm evicting the tenants. Watching my son mow the lawn in a $3,000 Italian suit was a level of satisfaction I hadn't anticipated. It was petty, yes, but after 6 months of being gaslit, drugged, and treated like a piece of expiring furniture, petty felt wonderful. Asterisk Richard pushed the mower over the last strip of grass near the hydrangeas, his face a mask of sweat and grass clippings. He killed the engine. The silence that followed was heavy, filled only by his ragged breathing. He looked toward the patio window where I stood. I raised my teacup in a mock toast. He didn't wave back. Asterisk, he looks like he's gonna pass out, Jock said, leaning against the kitchen counter behind me. He was eating a sandwich the size of his head. Should I go give him some water? Asterisk, no, I said, turning away from the window. There's a hose on the side of the house. He knows where it is. He used to drink from it when he was 10. Asterisk ruthless. Jocks chuckled, shaking his head. I love it. Asterisk, it's not ruthless, Jackson. It's education. Your father has forgotten the value of labor. He thinks money is something you manipulate, not something you earn. I walked to the kitchen island where we had set up our command center. Did you get hold of the locksmith? Asterisk. Yeah, he's en route. He's gonna rekey the whole perimeter. Front, back, garage, basement. Asterisk good, and the sheriff's office. Asterisk Jocks's expression turned serious. Deputy Miller is a buddy of Tiny's. He's meeting us here at 4. He said as long as the deed is in your name and there's no lease agreement, we can legally trespass anyone we want, especially if we have evidence of theft. Asterisk, we have plenty of that, I said, tapping the tablet that held the video of Brenda stealing my brooch. Asterisk, speaking of the devil, the front door flew open. I hadn't locked it yet, a tactical error. Or perhaps a subconscious invitation for one last confrontation. Asterisk, Brenda stormed in. She looked disheveled, her tennis skirt wrinkled, her eyes manic. She didn't see Jocks at first. She only saw me. Asterisk you, she hissed, pointing a manicured finger. You senile old witch. You ruined everything. Asterisk, I didn't flinch. Hello, Brenda? Did you forget something? Maybe the silverware? Or were you coming back for the copper wiring in the walls? Asterisk, don't get smart with me. She marched into the living room, grabbing a Ming vase off the mantel. I'm taking what's owed to us. We took care of you. We sacrificed our lives to babysit a drooling invalid. Asterisk, put the vase down, Brenda Jocks said, stepping out from the kitchen. His voice was low, dangerous. Asterisk, Brenda spun around, nearly dropping the porcelain. You gutter rat. Get out of my house. Asterisk, my house. I corrected her, stepping forward. It has always been my house. And as for taking care of me, is that what you call overdosing me on antipsychotics? Or plotting to gas me in my sleep? Asterisk, Brenda's face went white. She froze. I don't know what you're talking about. That was Richard. All Richard. I just wanted to help. Asterisk, liar. I said calmly. I heard you. Accelerate the decline. Put her in the facility in Vermont. You were the cheerleader, Brenda. You pushed him when he hesitated. Asterisk, Richard stumbled through the back door then, smelling of exhaust fumes and sweat. He saw Brenda holding the vase and Jocks looking like he was about to tackle her. Asterisk, Brenda. Put it down, Richard wheezed, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. Asterisk, no. She screamed, her composure cracking completely. I earned this. I put up with her smell, her stories, her existence. We are bankrupt, Richard. If we don't get some liquidity, they're going to repossess the Range Rover tomorrow. Asterisk, the Range Rover is the least of your problems, I said. I walked over to the sofa and sat down, smoothing my skirt. Sit down, both of you. I'm not taking orders from, Brenda started. Sit down. I slammed my hand on the coffee table. The authority in my voice. Honed by 40 years of marriage to a strong man and raising a difficult son, filled the room. Asterisk, they sat. Brenda on the love seat, clutching the vase like a lifeline. Richard on the ottoman, looking defeated. Asterisk, here's the situation, I said, clasping my hands. Richard, you owe me $550,000. The contract is ironclad. Brenda, you are an accomplice to attempted murder, elder abuse, and grand larceny. Brenda let out a squeak. However, I continued. I am not calling the police right now. Asterisk, Richard looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. You're not. Asterisk, no, because prison is too easy. You'd get 3 meals a day and a gym membership. I want something else. Asterisk, anything, Richard begged. I'll do anything. Asterisk, I know you will. Because I own you. I picked up a document Jocks had printed out for me. First, the eviction. You have exactly 2 hours to pack your personal belongings. Clothes and toiletries only. No furniture. No electronics that I paid for. No jewelry. Just the clothes on your back. Asterisk, where will we go? Brenda wailed. Our condo in the city is being foreclosed on. Asterisk, not my problem, I said coldly. Maybe you can sleep in the Range Rover until they tow it. But you aren't sleeping here. Asterisk, Mom, please, Richard whispered. It's cold out. Asterisk, it was cold in my bedroom when you shut off the heat to save money, remember? I shot back. I wore 3 sweaters. You'll figure it out. Asterisk, I turned the page. Second, Richard, your career is over. I've already drafted an email to the Ethics Board of the State Real Estate Commission. Attached to it is the audio file of you discussing how to defraud an elderly client me. I haven't hit send yet. Richard looked like he was going to vomit. Mom, if you send that, I lose my license. I lose everything. I can never work in this industry again. Exactly. I nodded. That is the leverage. You are going to work, Richard. But not in real estate. You're going to work to pay me back. Every cent. I can't pay back $500,000 working a minimum wage job. Then you better get 2 jobs. Jocks piped up. I hear the car wash is hiring. Tips are okay if you hustle. Richard glared at his son, but he didn't say a word. He knew he had no cards left to play. And third, I said, leaning forward, my voice dropping to a whisper. The family. You are going to call Ashley. You are going to tell her that you cut her off. No more tuition, no more spring break trips on my credit card. You are going to tell her the truth that you stole from her grandmother and now you are destitute. She hate me, Richard cried. She's delicate. She's a spoiled brat because you raised her to be useless, just like you, I said. It's time she learned the world doesn't run on daddy's credit. And if I refuse? I held up my phone. Then I called Deputy Miller. He's parked down the street, and I hand him the recordings. You'll be charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Brenda will be charged as an accessory. You'll both go away for 20 years. Minimum. The room was silent. The clock ticked on the wall, the same clock Richard had probably planned to sell. Okay, Richard whispered. Okay, I'll do it. Good. I stood up. Start packing. Jocks will supervise. If you take so much as a spoon that doesn't belong to you, the deal is off. Brenda stood up, trembling with rage. She looked at the vase in her hands, then at me. For a second, I thought she was going to throw it. Jocks tensed, ready to move. But she didn't have the nerve. She set the vase down on the table with a clatter. I hope you rot in this house. She spat at me. You bitter old hag. Get out of my sight, Brenda, I said, bored. Before I decide to add your tennis bracelets to the repayment plan? She stormed upstairs. Richard followed her, dragging his feet like a prisoner walking to the gallows. Jocks let out a long whistle. Remind me never to piss you off, Grandma. You're safe, kid. I smiled, patting his cheek. You have a soul. They sold theirs a long time ago. For the next 2 hours, the house was filled with the sounds of zippers and angry whispers. Jocks stood at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, ensuring they didn't sneak anything out. I sat in the kitchen, drinking tea, watching the driveway. At 4 p.m. sharp, a cruiser pulled up. Deputy Miller, a big man with a friendly face, walked to the door. Afternoon. Mrs. Bennett, he said, tipping his hat. Tiny said you might need a standby for a civil standby. Just a precaution, Deputy, I said. My guests are just leaving. Richard and Brenda came down the stairs. They were dragging for suitcases. They looked like refugees from a country club. Brenda was wearing sunglasses to hide her swollen eyes. Richard had changed into jeans and a t-shirt, but he still looked out of place. Like an actor wearing a costume he didn't understand. Keys, I said, holding out my hand. Richard dropped his house key, the garage key, and the key to my car into my palm. Goodbye, Mom, he said. His voice was hollow. Goodbye, Richard. Don't forget, the first payment is due on the 1st of the month. $5,000. Don't be late. He flinched, nodded, and walked out. We watched them load the suitcases into the Range Rover. Brenda got in the driver's seat, slamming the door so hard the car shook. Richard got in the passenger side. They drove away without looking back. As the car disappeared around the bend, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't sadness. It was ... lightness. For the first time in years, the house felt like mine again. The air felt cleaner. Asterisk. Asterisk, so, Jock said, coming up beside me. They're gone. You won. Asterisk, not yet, I said, watching the empty street. Taking their shelter and their pride is just step one. They still have their freedom. And as long as they have that, they'll try to come back. They'll try to find a loophole. Richard is a cockroach. He survives. Asterisk, so what's the end game? Jocks asked. Asterisk, I turned to my grandson. The end game is making sure they can never hurt anyone again, especially me. Asterisk, my phone buzzed. It was a text from the bank manager. Asterisk, Mrs. Bennett. Per your request. The foreclosure proceedings on the property at 42 Oak Drive have been expedited. We purchased the lien as instructed. Asterisk, I smiled. 42 Oak Drive was Richard and Brenda's vacation condo. The one they were heading to right now, thinking they had a place to sleep? Asterisk Jocks. I said, how would you like to take a little road trip? Asterisk, road trip. Asterisk, yes. I want to be there when the key doesn't work. Asterisk Jocks grinned, grabbing his keys. I'll drive. Asterisk, I walked out to the truck, leaving the front door open for the locksmith. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the lawn Richard had just mowed. It was going to be a beautiful evening. Asterisk. The golden boy was about to find out that everything he touched didn't turn to gold. It turned to dust. And I was the one holding the broom.
The city lights smeared across the windshield of the tow truck like streaks of neon paint. We were 40 miles from home, deep in the urban sprawl where Richard and Brenda had bought their weekend getaway condo 3 years ago. They called it an investment. I called it a vanity project, a glass and steel box in a trendy district that smelled like overpriced coffee and exhaust fumes. You quiet over there, Grams? Jack said, downshifting as we hit the exit ramp. The engine growled, a deep, guttural sound that vibrated through the floorboards. Just thinking, Jax, I said, watching the skyline. I used to worry so much about them. About whether they were happy, whether they had enough. I spent 40 years building a cushion for them to land on. And they tried to smother you with it, Jax muttered, checking his side mirror. Exactly. It's strange when the love turns off. It's not like a dimmer switch. It's like a breaker tripping. Snap. Dark. We're 3 blocks out, Jax noted. You sure you want to do this? We could just go home, order a pizza, and let them figure it out. No. I adjusted my cardigan. I need to see it. I need to know the loop is closed. And besides, you have a job to do. Jax grinned, tapping the dashboard. That I do. We turned onto Oak Drive. It was lined with high-rise condos that looked like filing cabinets for yuppies. We spotted the Range Rover immediately. It was double-parked in the loading zone in front of Building 42, hazard lights blinking rhythmically. Richard and Brenda were standing at the main entrance. Even from here, I could see the body language of panic. Richard was frantically swiping a key fob against the sensor. Brenda was kicking the glass door with her designer heel. Pull up right behind them. Box 'em in. Jack swung the massive truck around, reversing with expert precision until the tow bar was inches from the Range Rover's rear bumper. The air brakes hissed loudly, pshh, startling Richard so bad he dropped his keys. He spun around, shielding his eyes from our headlights. When he saw it was a tow truck, relief washed over his face. He probably thought we were city services or a helpful mechanic. Then the passenger door opened, and I stepped down. The look on Richard's face was worth every penny of the $500,000 I had spent that day. It was a cocktail of confusion, horror, and sheer disbelief. "Mom?" he squeaked. Brenda stopped kicking the door. She stared at me, her mouth hanging open. "What are you doing here? How did you follow us?" "I didn't follow you," I said, walking slowly toward them, my cane tapping against the concrete. I beat you here, electronically at least. The key isn't working, Richard stammered, holding up his fob. It must be demagnetized. The doorman isn't at the desk. The key isn't demagnetized, Richard, I said, stopping a few feet away. It's deactivated. What? The bank called me. Or rather, I called the bank. You see, when I bought your debt this afternoon, I also took a look at your other liabilities. You're 3 months behind the HOA fees here and 4 months behind the mortgage. The foreclosure was already in the system. I just gave it a little push. You can't do that, Brenda shrieked. This is our property. Actually, I pulled a folded document from my purse. It's the bank's property. And since I'm now the primary lien holder on your outstanding personal debts, the bank was very cooperative when I suggested they secure the asset to prevent flight risk. Flight risk? Richard looked like he was going to cry. Mom, we're not criminals. Aren't you? I raised an eyebrow. Conspiracy to commit murder, fraud. I'd say you're exactly the kind of people who flee the jurisdiction. So we can't get in? Richard looked at the glass doors. All our winter clothes are up there. My laptop. Locked out, I confirmed. The locks were changed remotely an hour ago. You can petition the bank on Monday to retrieve personal items. Until then, the unit is sealed. Brenda slumped against the glass, sliding down until she hit the pavement. She put her head in her hands. This isn't happening. This is a nightmare. No, dear. The nightmare was waking up every morning wondering why I couldn't remember my own name because you were feeding me poison. This is just reality catching up with you. Where are we supposed to sleep? Richard pleaded. We have no cash. You took the cards. We can't stay in the car. I looked at Jax. He was leaning against the truck, arms crossed, looking menacing in the flickering streetlight. About the car, I said. Jax pushed off the truck. Hey, Dad. Richard looked at his son, really looked at him, for the first time in years. Jax, talk to her. She's lost her mind. She's sharper than you are, Dad, Jax said, walking past them to the Range Rover. He knelt down and checked the rear axle. It's on the repo list, Brenda, he said. The order came through 30 minutes ago. Since I was in the neighborhood and I'm a licensed repo contractor, well, I figured I'd save the bank the mileage fee. No, Richard whispered. No. Jax, hook it up, I ordered. You got it, boss. Jax moved with efficient brutality. He lowered the lift, secured the wheels, and winched the Range Rover into the air. The luxury SUV, their last symbol of status, was hoisted up like a dead animal. The alarm started blaring. Weep, 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 echoing off the glass buildings. Turn it off, Brenda screamed, covering her ears. Can't, Jax yelled over the noise. I don't have the key. It'll die eventually. He finished securing the chains and hopped back into the driver's seat of the tow truck. The engine roared to life again. I stood there, on the sidewalk, looking at my son and his wife. They were standing on the curb, illuminated by the flashing hazard lights of their repossessed car. They had their suitcases, they had their expensive clothes, and they had absolutely nothing else. Mom, Richard took a step toward me. Please, just give us a ride. Give us a ride to a motel. I'll beg if I have to. I looked at him. I searched my heart for that maternal instinct, that soft spot that had forgiven him 1,000 times before. I looked for the little boy who used to bring me dandelions. But all I saw was the man who looked me in the eye and handed me a glass of poisoned water. You have legs, Richard, I said softly. Start walking. I turned around and climbed into the passenger seat of the truck. It was a high climb, but I didn't feel the ache in my joints. I felt light as a feather. Let's go home, Jax, I said. Jax released the air brake. As we pulled away, dragging their life behind us, I looked in the side mirror one last time. Richard and Brenda were standing small and alone on the empty street, the red taillights washing over them like a stain. Then we'd turned the corner, and they were gone. The drive back was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind you share with someone who knows exactly what you're thinking. We stopped at a 24-hour diner halfway home. The same diner, ironically, where Richard used to take me for Mother's Day brunch because it was quaint, cheap. We ordered pancakes and coffee. "So," Jack said, pouring syrup over a stack of flapjacks, "what happens tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," I said, blowing on my coffee, "I call my lawyer. The real lawyer. We rewrite the will." "Yeah?" He didn't look up. He wasn't fishing. He genuinely didn't care about the money. That's how I knew he deserved it. "I'm setting up a trust," I told him. "The house goes to you, the investments go to you. But there's a condition." He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. "What kind of condition?" "You have to use the garage," I smiled. "I want you to move your shop there. I'm tired of that quiet house. I want to hear engines. I want to hear music. I want life in that place." Jax's eyes misted over slightly. He blinked it away and grinned. "I think I can handle that, but the neighbors are gonna hate the AC/DC. "Let them hate it," I laughed. "I'll turn my hearing aids down." We got back to the estate around 3 a.m. The moon was high and bright, illuminating the freshly mowed lawn. The house didn't look like a prison anymore. It looked like a fortress. I walked into the kitchen and saw the empty space where the medicine bottle used to be. I saw the spot on the floor where Richard had begged. It felt like a different lifetime. Jax carried my knitting bag, the one that was considerably lighter now, up the stairs for me. "Get some sleep, Rams," he said at my bedroom door. "I'll be downstairs on the couch if you need anything. I'm not leaving." "I know you're not," I said. I reached up and cupped his face. "You're a good man, Jackson. Your grandfather would have been so proud of you today." "He'd have been scared of you," he laughed. "I know I am." "Good. Keeps you honest." I went into my room and closed the door. I walked to my vanity and picked up the photo of Henry. I traced his jawline with my thumb. "I handled it, Henry. I cleaned house." I whispered to the frame. I changed into my nightgown, the silk one.